Hello and welcome to Code with Star. How are you doing today? We're going to talk about ASP.NET Core Web API. And this is the video that I have been thinking about doing for a while. In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a Web API using ASP.NET Core. And I'm going to show you a minimal API example as well as a traditional control-based Web API. Let's start by checking the .NET SDK version on my box. So 7.0.102 is the version I'm going to use. If this is the first time you're trying to create a Web API, I recommend you to do the exercise with me. And you'll need .NET 6 or higher for the templates and so on. Just as an FYI, these are the SDKs that I've been using. If you do not know how to install an SDK, I have a video for you. I'll put a link on the right upper corner. So how do we create a Web API? .NET, new, web, -n, miniweb. In this line, web is a template name. -n allows us to pick a project name, and it is set to miniweb. And that's it. A new Web API is created. Let's run it and see. Let's go to the folder of miniweb and execute .NET watch. If you used .NET before, you probably are very familiar with .NET Run. Watch is a very similar verb as run, and it supports hard reload. And in the browser, to the localhost 5291, we have the hello world. So what did we just do? We used the .NET CLI, created the web server on my box, which is the localhost, and we used the browser to hit the root endpoint, and the web server returned hello, or actually, hello world. Magic? Actually, no. Let's open the project in VS Code and take a look at the code. In line 1, we create a web application builder. Line 2, we use the builder to build an app. On line 4, there are several pieces of information here. The method name is map_get. That means it's going to handle HTTP GET method. The first parameter, the slash, is the route. And slash means the root. That is the HTTP localhost port number slash, and that's a slash. And then there is a lambda. And that is the delegate that will be invoked, which returns hello world, of course. And putting these together, what it says is that when there is a HTTP GET method to the route of slash, the backend is going to return a string of hello world. Now remember, when we are talking about Web API, it's almost always these three elements: the route, the HTTP verb, and the response. If you don't know what HTTP method is at this moment, don't worry about that. I'm going to have another video to talk about that. And line 7 starts the app. You know, I am so excited every time I run this demo, because it wasn't the case in traditional .NET framework. It's way more complex than this. And of course, this is called the minimal API, which is supposed to be the minimal steps, the minimal code that's needed to establish a Web API, right? Okay, let's take a look at the control-based traditional Web API. We still use a .NET CLI to create the project. The template name for control-based Web API is Web API. Let's run and see what we have. Oh wow, a full Swagger. Well, I'm not going to explain Swagger at this moment. Let's put it aside and not worry about that yet. And instead, I'm going to show you another way to quickly test a Web API. And that is use curl. Well, it is very simple. Firstly, curl ships with Windows already. And what we do, we call curl and then the endpoint. For this application, the endpoint is the localhost 5222 weather forecast. I'll show you why is that the endpoint in a second. The result is a JSON collection of weathers. So how does the code look like? Well, by first glance, this is more complex than what we had in the minimal API example, right? And let's read it together. Line 1 created a builder, same. Line 3 till line 9 configures the builder. And of these lines, only line 5 is required. It adds the services of the controllers. Line 7 and 8 are services for Swagger support again, and its Explorer. So it is one additional line to the minimal API. Bear with me a little bit here. In the minimal API, after we develop it for a bit, chances are we're going to add our services there. So it's probably not going to be that different. Coming back to the controller-based API, line 10 builds the app. Again, it's the same. Lines 13 to 17, Swagger again. And by the condition, we know the Swagger Explorer will only be there for the development environment. Moving on, we have HTTPS redirection middleware. Then we have authorization middleware. And lastly, line 23, we have map controllers, the middleware. Basically, this forms up a pipeline for every request to come through. If you are interested to understand more about the request pipeline, check out the other video on the right upper corner. And on line 25, everything starts. But wait, why /weather forecast? And that is because we have a weather forecast controller here. Not this one. This one is just the module. The other one in the controllers folder. There are several things to watch here. The class inherits from controller base and is marked by API controller attribute. And that is how it's discovered by the map controllers method. In other words, map controllers will scan for every class that is marked by API controller attribute. And then it will decide the route and the HTTP method. And in this case, the route uses the name of the controller. Now, there is a little bit magic inherited from the MVC, that is the tailing controller is not part of the routing. So the final route is going to be /weather forecast rather than /weather forecast controller. And then we have a get method here on line 22 to handle HTTP get verb. Compared to the minimal API, this is the equivalent of the delegate that returned hello world. And again, 3 parts: route, HTTP verb, and the response. Let's high five. Today, we created 2 types of web API, minimal and controller based. Either one of them is easy to create, and we see the similarity in the code. Alright, my friends, let's stop it here. Let's talk about HTTP verbs in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let's keep coding, keep improving, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.